So if you look at millennials, which is our generation, only 9%, 9% say that the current financial system is working for people like them. 9%. That's a low number. But welcome back, folks, to another episode of the still unnamed podcast. We're gonna make a name, or
I don't think
we
we
should just keep it this.
I don't think we have a name yet.
All right, we'll just keep it unnamed for now. How you doing today?
I'm good. Good.
How's your
Definitely a lot going on. I'll be going to a trade show, it looks like next week or 2 weeks from now in New York. It's called the Blockchain Summit. But I got asked to go. I was actually on a podcast with Amazon AWS last week, and I met a lot of incredible people there. But from there, one person just kind of reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you at this Blockchain Summit. We have a group of other founders that are trying to have a project, and we'd like to get your input on it." So it's been pretty exciting. There's been a lot of opportunities with having to explain the startup and what we're doing, and I think it's just really amazing.
There's been a lot of positive, I think, feedback that we've gotten.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. There's been so much going on in the Web3, crypto, and Bitcoin space. So let's check it out. I think the first article
it's going to be our episode today is going to be heavily focused on the changes in crypto this week and the updates. Let's toggle over to that first one. So I saw this yesterday. I thought it was really interesting. We always talk about Bitcoin supply, demand, how there's always a constant fluctuation and always a constant supply, especially on the exchanges. But with this new spot ETF that's supposed to be approved by the SEC, hopefully within the next, I think, few weeks, is priming a possible supply shock. So if you scroll down, it kind of gives you the chart of the supply that's been available right here. So this is over a 10-year chart. As you can see, the purple line represents the exchange balance, and then the gray line represents the actual supply that's currently active. Yeah, it's kind of hard to read.
Okay, this put through Glassnode. Yeah, it's really crazy. 90% of all Bitcoin has been mined, but I think the total supply, like, that's actually out there and people actually have it, it's probably far less than that. A lot of people have probably lost their Bitcoin throughout the years periodically. I know I did when I was in college. I had a couple hundred Bitcoin on my laptop and I threw it away. I didn't understand what Bitcoin was, like many other people at that time. But the total supply would be going down. So in theory, if the demand stays consistent, and this goes back to an economic history or economics class like lesson, supply goes down, demand remains the same, usually price goes up.
So the gray line, the shorter line, if you look, it's all that 3 million of Bitcoin supply. Last time it was active was greater than 10 years ago. So essentially 3 million Bitcoin has just been dormant and hasn't moved, but you can see the exchange balance is slowly declining. So I think over the course of the last few years, the available level of Bitcoin on all the exchanges, like the liquid value or the liquid tokens available, has dropped to about 2.3 million, which is the lowest since April 2018. If you remember in 2018, what happened, there was a huge bull market for Bitcoin, and that's when it broke the 20,000 mark for the first time. So, and that was that around the time of the halvening, right?
The last halvening was on May 11th, 2020. That was the last halvening. That was the third halvening. And this halvening that's going to be coming up in roughly about 180 days. I think it's estimated to be around April of next year. This will be the fourth halvening event.
Okay. So yeah, anytime there's a halvening, generally price goes up, supply goes down, the verification of transactions becomes harder, the reward becomes lower. So that paired with possible, spot ETF where a lot of institutional investors will be coming in. I think all that's going to play a huge role and factor into how much liquid Bitcoin is actually available.
Yeah, so these miners, they only get a certain amount of reward for every block that they're able to verify on the blockchain. And it seems like, every 4 years that emission rate or the amount of reward that a miner would get, it gets reduced in half. And I'm curious, Amr, like, why was this done by design? Is there a certain reason?
My take is just anything that has a finite availability always has a higher store of value and a higher overall value versus something that's available in abundance, and it's essentially unlimited, kind of like how we use money right now, where we can just add some more zeros on a screen or print some more money. That's an unlimited resource, so the value of something that's unlimited generally tends to go down, in my opinion. What's your take on it?
To your credit, I think you've hit it right on the spot. It's definitely a deflationary sort of currency or some sort of deflationary value mechanism.
Right.
Unlike how our traditional central banking is, where money is inflationary,
Yeah.
it's a completely different mechanism, which I find
And
pretty
accounting
fascinating.
accounting errors are in the billions that just get swept under the rug.
Yeah. The problem with central banking today is like the monetary supply, it's not predictable. And
Right.
because it's not predictable, people who save money, they end up essentially losing value on how much money is being saved because the supply keeps increasing. So it
Yeah,
kind of sucks.
it's the savings under your mattress concept,
Yeah,
right? Where you're just putting all your money that you that you accumulate in your lifetime under your mattress. It's not actually working or doing anything.
pretty
So
much.
that's pretty
Yeah.
much what it is sitting in a bank account if it's not, accumulating or accruing interest or making more money. It's just slowly deflating in value.
Yeah. I think through the last three halving events, the price performance has been pretty tremendous every single time. It doesn't happen immediately, but there's usually it's like a lagging indicator from what I understand.
Yeah, it's a downstream
So
effect.
yeah, we'll see
The
what happens. I don't think it's priced in yet, and it won't be for a while.
Yeah, they're speculating to see if the spot ETF, once it gets approved, is it already priced in right now, or is it still going to fluctuate? I think it's still going to fluctuate. What's your what's your thoughts?
Actually, I wanted to ask you a crazy question.
Yeah,
What is your price prediction for Bitcoin next year and then this next cycle?
next year by end of year.
Yeah, so next year, by end of the year, what do you think Bitcoin's price is going to be? And because a cycle is roughly 4 years, what do you think the top of that cycle is going to be? I'm
I
actually
think the
really curious to
top,
hear your thoughts.
being optimistic, I'm hoping the top of the cycle's over 100K, considering the last high at what it was like right under 70K. But next year, it all depends. Again, if the spot ETF actually gets approved, if there's also a lower supply, the halvening has a huge impact. There's a lot of new platforms and things being built on the Bitcoin network. If all that takes into play, if it doesn't break 50 or 60,000 next year, I'd be surprised. So that's what I'm hopeful for. But we've been in the crypto space for since what 2018. We've seen the roller coaster. When I thought it was going to be up here, it ended up being down here. And when I'm like, oh, this might not be the lowest, it like jumps back all the way up here. I'm like, this is insane. This is so hard to follow. So that's my take. What's your predictions?
I've been hearing so many numbers floating around. Some people have said 60,000, 80,000, 100,000. It's really hard to tell. I think this Bitcoin, it fills the void of central banking. If I were to guess here, by the end of next year, I think we'll probably hit 100,000. That's my best guess. But if we're talking about this next cycle, I'm thinking seven digits.
You think
I know
so?
it's crazy. I know it's crazy. You think that Bitcoin can hit seven digits, but I think the next 4 years, it certainly will.
Well, it's been
This
speculated.
thing,
That's the thing. Like a
it's
lot of people are
speculative.
throwing the $1 million number around, and I'm like, I'm kind of hesitant to believe it, but I'm like also hopeful that it happens. It's like us being visited by aliens. I'm kind of weary about it, but I'm also hopeful it happens. It's the same thing. Like we don't know because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, again, I don't really have, some like scientific method I'm coming up and approaching this number. But where I look at is all these different events that are happening, on an international and national level here in America. You have the monetary supply, half of it's been printed in the last 4 years. We've had record inflation. I don't believe the CPI numbers that the feds are putting out. I think it's complete bullshit. You have a housing crisis that's going on here in America. We're printing and exporting our debt to other countries, and we're supporting possibly two more wars here
Right.
for quite a while. And other central banks in other countries, they're starting to see a lot of losses within their own banking system.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I look at this and people are probably questioning, well, why do we have a central banking figure here? There's a huge problem that's going on. Why can't we just put our money in Bitcoin? And I think in Argentina, a lot of people actually prefer Bitcoin than the actual currency of the country.
You think
So we'll
it's
see.
something you think it's more of people because most people I don't want to say go with the status quo, but they just kind of follow what is supposed to be followed. Do you think most people are just looking for some sort of indicator from a huge institution or something that's touted as credible to then be like, all right, Bitcoin's a green light? Do you think the bulk of the population are waiting for that? Or do you think a bulk of the people maybe don't even know about Bitcoin and, its benefits and its use cases and all that? Or you think it's a mixture of both?
Actually, I think most people in America are not financially literate. We're not taught in school, in high school or college, how to save money, how money works, how does the central banking system work. None of us are taught that. And I think a lot of people I talk to about Bitcoin, they're very defensive about why should I take this as, money? It's just made up. It's fugazi. It's just some internet software that, anyone can hack and it's used to do malicious things with. But I find it to be a very interesting conversation when, I talk to a lot of boomers that are over 65, they're on Medicare, they're getting Social Security. I'm just like, these guys really don't understand how money works here in America. Every time,
Well,
this money gets printed out, who has to pay for this? It's the
yeah.
younger generation of people. You, me, Gen Z.
But we're paying for the, I don't want to say sins of the past, but we're paying for previous actions. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've explained because like I've explained Bitcoin to my parents and they understand it. They see what potential it could have, but they don't 100% get it or believe in it. You know, so there's going to be that, and I hate this word so much, generation gap. I hate that phrase, but there's going to be a generation gap between our parents' generation, our generation, and the next generation after us that's going to understand it. I think the next generation is leaning more towards the entire cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin and all of them, all coins, whatever you say, that they're leaning more towards it. If you actually toggle over to, there's an article that says crypto reshapes the American dream for younger generations.
Yeah, let me pull that one up.
It has a really interesting metric, a chart. No, it's not that one.
What's the article called?
Crypto reshapes the American dream for younger generations. It should be like the last article.
I see it.
So you scroll down, there's like a chart. You can open that chart up. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit. There you go. So if you look at millennials, which is our generation, only 9%, 9% say that the current financial system is working for people like them. 9%. That's a low number.
That's pretty low. I'm actually curious to actually read the data here. They interviewed millennials 26 to 40. I'd love to know a little bit more about who these millennials are. What are their
Yeah,
demographics?
their background, all that.
Yeah.
But there's about 38% of the younger generation that view crypto and blockchain as a possible economic opportunity versus traditional finance. And as you get older, that number goes down to 26%. And of that 26%, about 31 own cryptocurrency versus 12% are just holding it as digital assets. But the younger the generation, the more that they're believing in it. With Gen Z about 40% that are leaning towards cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. So if you look at it from a perspective, maybe like a 10, 20, 30-year timeline, when the next generation comes up, they're going to be looking at alternatives because they've grown up with the current financial setup not working in their best interest. So they're going to look for alternatives. I think us looking at these things as alternatives now is very beneficial because we're kind of getting ahead of the curve. But it should be interesting to see who, over the next 10 or 15 years, how this gets widely adopted, who ends up using it, if it's something that kind of brings a divide between younger and older generations, or if it's more of a cohesive thing. Because if you think about technology, just 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, we barely had computers. Cell phones were like not a common thing. As the 2000s came through, more and more people had cell phones. Now, kids that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they have a supercomputer in their pocket, you know? And when we were growing up, it's like we didn't have phones till we were in high school, maybe, if that, maybe even college. But now somebody who's 9 or 10 has a iPhone 15 Pro Max in their pocket, a phone that's bigger than the pocket that they're probably putting it in. But they have that, So it's 10, 15 years down the line. Right now, everyone's like, "Oh, crypto's not good," blah blah blah. They have that narrative. Maybe in 15 years, that whole narrative's going to flip and it's going to be widely adopted. That's what we're
Yeah.
hoping for.
When you get out of school, whether it's high school, I mean, let's talk about someone who's getting out of college. The first thing they realize is like, I got to go to work. And then when they start to look at all the bills that are coming due, it's rent, it's food. Oh, student loans. Oh, it's at a really high interest rate that I got to pay. And you start to realize every paycheck that you make, 90% of it's gone. And maybe I have 10% discretionary funds where I can go out and have fun for myself.
If
A lot
that.
of people just say, I'm going to be working for the rest of my life. Do you think Medicare is going to be around for me? Healthcare? I don't know. 65? My gosh, I'm probably 21 right now at this point. That's a very long time for me to work for the rest of my life. And I
Right.
think it's a very dark tunnel for a lot of people who are just getting out of college right now. What I find really interesting about this graph is it says top reasons people started or would start using crypto. The first reason is to invest and make money. The second reason is to diversify my investments. And third is to get in before it's too late. But I think there's another reason, at least this was my reason of why I got in. It's because of the applications of crypto and what the impact could be in the future. That was actually my reason. I saw and read Satoshi's white paper. I said, holy crap, this is like the next internet. This is going to
Right.
change the world. But it seems like, a lot of people are just more absorbed into the financial price projections of Bitcoin and crypto. Where can this go? And granted, that's something also to be interested in. But I feel like people don't truly fully grasp how crazy crypto Bitcoin is and how it could shake up the entire financial system.
Yeah, I think because the narrative, especially when Bitcoin first, I guess, blew up and became well aware for a majority of people, it was all just a price projection thing. Like, oh, it's going to go up to this much, it's going to go up to this much, people are going to get in, and some people bought really high and then they had to sell really low, and vice versa. It was all just based around the price, but the actual application and the actual use case for it, people don't talk about enough, and there's not enough exposure, and maybe there's not enough real world application where people can utilize it and then report back on it. I just think it's not there, at least within the US. I know other countries have a lot more application. You can go to any store and use Bitcoin to purchase whatever you want. We don't have that here yet, and I think a lot of it is mixed with narrative, a lot of it's politics, a lot of it's just trying to maintain the current financial system, and a lot of it's just people, the lag of technology and the capitalism and kind of milking what's currently there. I think a lot of it's just that. But if everyone gets onto the train of, just innovation and new use cases and things that could essentially benefit the entire crypto network market, all that, I think it's got a lot of potential. But we'll have to see. It's honestly up to this millennial generation, which includes us, to find these use cases and applications and actually apply it to the world. That way, we can prove that this wasn't just all BS and it was just a price hype. So there's a lot of new projects though too that are coming out. So it's really exciting in my opinion.
I don't know if you remember this. We were actually at Nordstroms one time together, and I had to do a return, or maybe it was a purchase or something. And I remember there was these two high school kids in front of me, or no, they were behind me in line, and they were talking about Dogecoin. And I was like, what is going on? I thought, a lot of people just don't talk about crypto. I thought it was just only a few like, tech nerds that really are into this. And I just remember these kids were talking about Dogecoin. and that they would spot each other for lunch money with Dogecoin. So I turned around and asked these kids, like, did I hear what you guys were saying correctly? You guys actually buy and trade Dogecoin and you send it to your friends? Like, who uses this? And these high school kids were like, yeah, everyone in our high school, we buy Doge and send it to each other as a joke. It's just fun. I was like, wow, this new generation is definitely catching on.
We'll see. Let's toggle over to. We can avoid the Bitcoin search. I'll just bring it up. So Bitcoin query search queries over the last few weeks has increased, especially in the UK. It's like 826%. Obviously, the price went up over the last week and a half. So a lot more people are kind of hopping in. A lot of this might just be getting in before it's too late. But people are monitoring this more than they were in the last few years. So, there's a lot of movement happening between the spot ETF, between so SPF thing, which we're going to talk about next, and just kind of all the exchanges restructuring, reorganizing, etc. So more people are definitely interested, but we'll see if these numbers keep going up. Let's
Yeah,
hop over.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I
me too,
hope
man.
so.
Let's hop over to the updates on SBF.
Jesus Christ. And Bankman-Fried. This one was so interesting. I've been following the trial, and granted, they're not broadcasting this live. What people have to do is they actually have to go to the court, and they have to get in the court super early. And sometimes they can't even get a seat, so they have to go to the standing room. So there's been a lot of great journalists that have been putting forward news about this. I mean, you've had so many credible, powerful people that have had to testify. You had Sam Bankman-Fried's girlfriend. You've had one of his best friends who was his partner. You've had his in-house counsel that has sort of testified to the jury. And a lot of the stuff has been fairly, I would say, convincing from what I've heard. But what's really interesting now is that Sam Bankman-Fried he's actually taking the stand to testify. And I think most attorneys would probably say, I don't want my client to testify. I don't want my client to testify at all. But apparently he is.
But
So he actually
he pushed it from the very beginning that he wanted to talk, if you remember. It's like that was the original narrative, and then they shut that down super fast, completely swept it under the rug, and after months later, it comes back to he's going to end up testifying. And he has to testify twice, which is even crazier. Because I guess he didn't have his thoughts and everything in order.
No, I
Before.
think so. Yesterday, when he was supposed to testify, the jury was dismissed by the judge.
Right.
I'm not really sure what the actual reasoning or rationale was behind it. I don't think it was because he wasn't ready. I don't think the judge cares if you're ready or not, but I think the judge wanted to make sure that the line of questioning would be admissible, meaning it would not branch out and be non-admissible evidence or non-admissible testimony. So it sounds like some legal jargon, but that was kind of my understanding.
Well, the issue was that between SBF and his attorneys, they couldn't. They were trying to discuss what to say, what not to say, and you can't really do that you know, in the middle of court and take breaks like that. So they were like, that's why the judge sent the jury home. They had to get everybody to get their thoughts and everything together, what they could say, could not say on the stand, and then come back. So he's supposed to be in court today testifying. I looked this morning. I didn't see any updates. So we should hear something
Everyone's
by
probably
this afternoon.
all these journalists are probably in the standing room still taking notes, and as soon as they get out, you're gonna hear someone from a live stream. You're gonna hear someone on X or Twitter just tweeting about this and saying, "Here's all the juicy details," and they've been really fucking juicy details. I gotta tell you,
It's a lot of exposure.
yeah.
So I guess there was like some updates. If you go over to the next one, I just thought this
BlockFi.
was no. It says Sam Bankman-Fried thought that taking FTX deposits through Alameda was legal. Yeah.
Oh man.
So when I read the title, I was like, "There's no way he actually said this." But if you scroll down, he actually quoted that he thought it was completely legal. He's like, "Did you believe taking FTX deposits through Alameda was completely legal?" And he said, "Yeah, I did. I was a CEO of both at the time, and FTX didn't have a bank account, and I thought only to future tradings, and Alameda was authorized to do these future trades." and so he just shifted the money around. I can't. The logic doesn't logic to me.
Well, our current central banking, our financial system, it works on a fractional reserve, right? But why
Right.
was Bitcoin created in the first place?
To
It
not
was to
have that.
address all the issues of central banking.
Right.
There was an issue of rehypothecation of assets in 2008. So it's very disingenuous to say, hey, I don't know what I was doing. I didn't know that taking customer deposits was legal. The entire reason why crypto and Bitcoin was created in the first place was to address this issue.
And to have transparency behind all of it.
I
Yeah.
don't see how he's going to convince a jury of gross negligence here, or that he was just, he didn't know what he was doing. I've
Well,
seen some of his arguments. He said, like, oh, I'm not a programmer, so I really don't know what's going on with the code.
I'm like a little speechless. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. There's like
The
a
only
lot of documentation that they were communicating through Signal, and everything was just getting auto deleted. And then all of a sudden, there was a point in time where they turned all that auto delete off, and it was, he said he heard from regulators, and so he stopped doing that. But it's like, if are you flagging yourself that everything before that was stuff that you shouldn't be exposed, or I don't know. There's just a lot of tomfoolery going around from
Yeah,
this
where's
whole
the
thing.
adults in the room? I hate to say it, but where are the adults? It saddens me in the sense like this was such an amazing business model to be in a crypto exchange, and
Yeah.
if they just ran it properly, I think they would have been up there for sure. They
Let me.
had the craziest marketing. I still remember being at Tomorrowland in Belgium a couple years ago, and FTX was just everywhere there. It was really cool. But man, they really just fucking shit the bed.
Yeah. Do you think? I guess let me ask you your honest opinion. Do you think there was a level of intent there, or do you think this was just complete too much growth, too fast, too quick, with just too much of everything all at once?
The intent was for him to make money, right? He took
Right.
money from customer deposits and he transferred it to his venture capital firm and he made some bets. I think that's really silly because you're asking the customers to not participate in those bets with you, yet you're getting all the upside,
Right.
but you're asking the customers to also share the downside.
Right.
That's kind of unethical. Actually, that's not kind of. It is very
It's
unethical.
pretty unethical.
It's very
Okay.
unethical.
I was always battling with that, was that intent there? Because, sometimes it's just you're growing so fast, you can't keep track of everything. But I think when you're on this kind of scale, if you don't keep track of everything, it's all on you. You can't, you can't say you couldn't keep track of it because you're just growing too fast. I
Yeah.
think that's an invalid argument.
It's sad,
So
but it is what it
it
is,
is.
right?
The saddest thing is that there was a lot of positivity and a lot of maybe hype, but also there's just a lot of positive dialogue going around crypto and Bitcoin. But when this all fell through, it just put a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Any kind of DeFi, all that. Like, it just pretty much took all the progress that had happened over years and years and just kind of set it back. So the prices are clearly not indicating that, but I think the overall sentiment about cryptocurrency and about Bitcoin had an effect with all this fallout that happened.
The
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 crypt,
interest the interesting thing here is that no matter what happens to Sam Bankman-Fried at the end of the day, whether he walks free or he doesn't walk free, I think he's going to be the most hated person in the world. I would have said Bernie Madoff would have taken that,
yeah,
but now it's Sam Bankman-Fried. There's so many people on an international level that had their money with him, so many, and they want to start the crypto exchange again. Why would anyone want to go back? It's like going back to the old girlfriend. No one wants to go back to the old girlfriend.
hey, sometimes that's all you can, that's your only hope. And so sometimes
I,
people go back to that. I have no idea why people would even put their trust back into something.
yeah, I don't care who the leadership is. I don't want to be anywhere around a crypto exchange that has a blemished record, especially if they
Yeah.
took customer deposits, can't run things correctly.
Don't you think that's like not red flag 101, but isn't that just common sense to be like, hey, this you shouldn't do this from an ethical standpoint. Like if I thought I had to do that, I'd be like, yeah, this isn't right. Like something doesn't sit right with me. You know? I don't
Well,
know.
obviously, all these people thought it felt right at that time.
The other
They
article that
had
was
such an amazing business plan, but they just fucked it up. They could just been a market maker and sat back and said, "This is an amazing business."
well.
Sad.
Here's the thing: the business plan was great, and initially, everything was all the boxes were checked, everything made sense. You think there was a time and point where just greed took over, and it was just right? That's all it was. Because it's not like, oh, we just didn't know what was going on. It's just greed got the best of them, and they just took it to a whole nother level. Like we haven't seen something like this since, like you said, the Madoff days. And this is in modern times that this is happening again or happened again. So, human nature is also, there are greedy people in the world. So greed's obviously going to take over unless you can control it. And this is like a prime example of that, or it just went too far.
I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but there's something called federal sentencing guidelines. So this is what the judge would use to determine how much jail time an individual will get based on the severity of the charges. But I think it would be very interesting to sort of look this up and actually see what kind of exposure Sam Bankman-Fried actually has.
Sentencing guidelines.
So I think I saw somewhere, this is like an article, maybe last month, but there's a statutory maximum of 110 years in prison that he's looking at.
Okay. Was
So
that
I
with
don't
the
know.
original charges, or was that like after some of those things got dropped off?
I think that's for seven of the counts of fraud and conspiracy. So I believe this is after the campaign financing charge was dropped.
Okay. So 110 years is what he's looking at.
Or maybe it could be 10 years. I really don't know what's going to happen.
It always falls with something in the middle, you know. It'll be
Yeah.
like, I bet if it's 25 or 30 or 40 years, it's that's your life. It's the whole life.
I'm just going to read off the charges here: committing wire fraud on FTX customers, conspiring to commit wire fraud on FTX customers, committing wire fraud on Alameda Research lenders, conspiring to commit wire fraud on Alameda Research lenders. Oh, then there's just more securities fraud. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like three. It's the conspiracy of doing it. It's the actual activity of doing it, and then it's yeah. So
We should get a lawyer on our next podcast and ask about all these legal terms. Like, what does it mean to conspire? What is a
yeah,
conspiracy? Be
yeah.
pretty
I'd like
cool.
to. I'd like to know. I think our audience would also like to have it broken down into things that we can understand. Because I mean, we've seen attorneys speak and legal documents. Like half the time, I'm reading it. I'm like kind of glancing over words because you don't. It's in such a specific jargon. We don't understand it.
Yeah, attorneys craft language very interestingly, and it's done in such a way to say certain things and omit other things.
Dude, it's an art
That's
form.
a good way of putting it. Yeah, oh, for
I
sure.
look at it as an art
For
form.
sure. For sure.
Like
For sure.
I've seen some legal documents where you don't understand anything and you're just like, wow, this makes no sense, but at the same time, that's exactly what was needed.
Man.
The other SPF article, it just has some more quotes and things. He thought he could, essentially get it all back. I didn't know they were starting the exchange up again, so this might dwell into that. But if you scroll down, there's just one, yeah, right there with they're talking about the whole. So he said that Nishad had said that he found out about the hole. Basically, Alameda was taking FTX customer assets in late summer of 22. So August or September of 2022. He said that he talked to Sam directly, and Sam told him that it is what it is, and there's nothing we can do. Only thing we can do is grow the company and fill the hole. Like, just let that marinate for a second.
Was this the first time he was a CEO or a founder of a company?
I believe so.
I don't understand how you don't consider the ramifications of your actions here, especially if it's a financial service that you're providing.
But if you're a founder, or you started a company, don't you think that far ahead and be like, hey, this is all the things that I can see in my horizon of what could go wrong. So let's make sure we have systems and checks and balances in place to make sure that those things don't happen, so that these things that could possibly go wrong don't go wrong. Like, isn't that your first intuitive thought as when you're starting something new? Other than, obviously growing it and making sure that business is good, everything's coming in properly, but you also have that opposite end. There's the growth end, and then there's the protection end. Like, my brain always works like that, where I'm focused on growth, but I'm making sure everything on the other end of regulation, of protecting my business, protecting the assets, all that, all the risks, everything is mitigated properly, and we know what could possibly happen. Like, isn't that kind of your train of thought too?
It is. One of my preceptors, actually, from pharmacy school, one of the most key lessons he taught me is don't start something you can't stop. And I really took that to heart. He was basically saying, look, if you're going to start fudging things, it's going to be wrong. And it's going to be wrong for the rest of your life. And things that tie back to that, you've built a really terrible foundation. That's how I
Right.
took the advice. And I thought it was very, very strong life advice. But in this sort of situation, you just started a company. You're the founder. Your goal is to make sure that this business is going to stand the test of time, that it has a strong moat. If you're trying to become a market maker, you are trying to create this platform where people can buy and sell crypto, but you're taking, the crypto away from people that believe they own it. Yeah, I mean, that's very problematic. Very problematic.
Yeah, I just don't see the rationale, but maybe I'm a little bit more black and white than our boy SPF was.
A little
Um,
wild.
yeah, but it should be interesting. I want to see, kind of what
Do you think Netflix will make a movie out of Sam Bankman-Fried and
one hundred
FTX?
percent, 100%.
Who do you
It's
think they'll
gonna.
cast? Who do you think they'll cast for that?
Oh, I'm trying to think who kind of looks. Who's the guy from the Facebook movie? He can't play a crazy role like that twice though. But I don't know.
I'm thinking about the guy from Nick. From
Oh, not Seth Rogen? No, 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 the other guy,
no,
right?
yeah, I forgot Michael Sarah. Michael Sarah.
Yeah, he fits that role.
Yeah, I feel like he would play a really good job of doing this role. Not offending, Michael Sarah here, but his acting would be pretty on point, I think, for Sam Bankman-Fried through everything we've seen and sort of heard.
The guy I was thinking about was Jesse Eisenberg.
Oh, Jesse Eisenberg would be great too.
Yeah, because he played that role of Zuckerberg in The Social Network so well. Like, I could
Actually,
see.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I could see that too. That would be pretty interesting.
but there's gonna be a Hulu documentary. There's gonna be a Netflix documentary. There's gonna be every streaming platform is gonna have some sort of documentary. There's gonna be one on YouTube. There's gonna be a lot. It just all needs to pan out the way it's gonna pan out.
I might have to resubscribe to Netflix if they have this show.
Oh yeah, you can't use mine anymore.
I know. That's pretty bad. I got blocked.
It's like the IP. They've been tracking that IP real well. I had it. I had
Wow.
mine signed up at home too, and then my parents tried logging in. They're like, "Hey, it doesn't work anymore." I'm like, "Oh, took effect, guys. We got to get a home account now."
Yeah, it sucks.
So, but we'll definitely be updating everybody on this SPF trial. I know everyone else is interested too to see kind of what pans out. I don't have anything else for today. Do you?
No, I think we've covered a lot on crypto news and Bitcoin news that's kind of going on. But
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
guess,
So with BlockFi, if any of our viewers had invested through BlockFi, they are doing their wind down after the bankruptcy. They had to let some of the FTX stuff kind of pan out. But they are planning to give customers access to their liquid assets. I believe they can already do that. Let's see.
BlockFi, dude,
Yeah.
this was the craziest thing to me. So BlockFi went under their lending platform, from what I remember for crypto. They went under, and FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, acquired BlockFi. And as part of the condition of that sale, in order to save BlockFi's company, they would essentially transfer over all the customer deposits from BlockFi to FTX. And what ended up happening? They took the customer deposits and started investing it with Alameda Research. Crazy.
It's like you go to a wholesaler to buy a giant bag of cash at a discounted rate. That's exactly what they did. They're like, all
Oh,
right,
for sure.
these guys are going under. We're just gonna buy them for pennies on the dollar, take all that customer assets, and then continue doing what we're doing. But
It's just crazy. Like, did you really think you could get away doing that?
yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, I'm trying to parallel it back to like how this would apply in like the pharmacy world. It's like you could buy files like for a chain that's shutting down. You buy all their files, you buy all their customers, or the profiles, but then you don't do anything. Like, how would you parallel that? You bill all the medications, or you just like it's essentially they got a huge chunk of customers. They took all their money and then they used it for their own benefit. And then everyone that was invested in BlockFi, it was like, sorry, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah, the way I look at it in terms of pharmacy, it's like buying the prescription information, the customer data, and then
Yeah.
billing the insurance for 1 year up front and then filing
Yeah.
bankruptcy.
Yeah.
It's not ethical.
It's
Definitely. This
not.
is
Yeah. But
it's wrong.
there might be people there's always a spectrum of how your ethics. Every human has a spectrum of ethics, and I just think his has probably had good intention in the beginning, but it just went to the deep end of the other end of that spectrum, and there was like no way out.
Yeah, when you're that young and you run a company that becomes that successful, yeah, I'm sure your brain acts very differently. You haven't weathered the storm, you haven't seen ups and downs of how a company could be. Pretty sure a lot of it just really got to his head.
I think a lot of because I can speak personally. I've been through some life altering, changing things, and those hardships is what kind of develops your ethics as a human being. So it's you kind of know like, hey, you put yourself in this position, it didn't work out for you. This is the consequences. This is what you got to go. You got to deal with. You got to go through, but you come out on the other end a better person as long as you learned from those mistakes. Um, but I don't know, like I guess for SBF, his background with his family and all that stuff. It was always just it was always like a peak life, in my opinion, constantly. So I don't know him personally, so I don't know if he had any hardships or things like that. But it just seems like that crucial component of development maybe wasn't there. I don't know.
Hardships
Maybe I'm
are what develop a person for sure.
right.
I hate to say it, but a lot of people who go through hardship and are able to figure out their problems and work on it, however long it takes, they become very mature people for sure. And I
Mature
think
understanding of the world.
there's just a lack of maturity here at FTX. It's not excusable for what happened for sure, but
Right.
could things have been better? Certainly, absolutely.
Well, that's all for today.
Sounds
Uh,
good.
we'll keep you guys updated with whatever we hear from this whole SBF thing.
Sounds good.
Alrighty,
If you're
take care,
interested
everyone.
in saving money on your next prescriptions and earning Bitcoin on that refill, check out nihowdy.com. It's our startup that we've been working on, and I think you'll be thrilled to see what we're doing here.
Check it out, guys. Take care.
All right. See ya.